them committing very low-level nuisance offenses. And our mental health court's been one way to kind of guide them through the criminal justice system, but get them the services they need, so hopefully they stop offending and can lead productive lives. We've been active the last few years in our vets court for our returning veterans who have been committing criminal offenses. Again, a chance to kind of get them the services they need. Our homes court deals with our offenders who are homeless, and that is a large reason why they're out committing some of the crimes. And so we work on getting them stable housing and then other services they need. And then our gift calendar, which is for our repeat prostitution offenders, trying to, again, help them get services so they can get out of that life. In 2015, we had another very good and very busy year. Staffing-wise, we ended up creating 2 brand new positions that we're really, really excited for. The first is we hired a diversion coordinator, and she's going to be working on all those diversion programs that I mentioned. The unique thing about this position is not only will she be reviewing cases that are already set for a court appearance, and she'll be helping to screen them for eligibility so we can ensure that we're being fair and offering the opportunity to do these programs to all offenders. But right now she's been able to review citations, and she makes an attempt to contact people who have been issued a citation for eligible offenses and offer them a chance to do this program in lieu of coming to court. And if they accept and enroll, their citation can be dismissed, and if they're successful, it doesn't come to court, and if they're not, we can always bring them back in. But that's a new layer that we've added. And we've got a technology fix in the works with Hennepin Justice Integration Partners. I'm not sure if you know, but this week on Thursday, the VIBE system, which is our citation system, is going away, and all citations are now going to be publicly viewable in Minsus. And the issue with that is now a lot of these citations that people get that we divert through these diversion programs, they're still going to be seen in that public state record system. So we've approached the courts with a technological solution to basically create a bucket where these citations can sit until we've had a chance to review them, offer people a chance to do our diversion programs. If they have, it will keep it out of that court record, thus, eliminating the need for people to do expungements and things like that, because even having a record of these citations can have some collateral consequences. So we're hoping that technological fix will go through in 2016. And our other new position is our audio-video evidence technician. We took one of our legal support specialist positions and converted it to this position because with all of the e-technology, we found that we did not need as many legal support specialists. And our new, we just call him our audio-video guy, he is going to be very helpful in dealing with all of the audio and video evidence we get. He can convert it so it's easily viewable in court. He can help us redact it if necessary based on court rulings, and he's going to play a big part in managing the body cam videos when MPD starts that. So we're really excited. I think it's a really unique position that we're lucky to be able to fund. I think he's added a lot of value. He's over helping our civil attorneys with a big civil trial right now, and it just helps us present our cases a lot more effectively. And so we're really excited about that. We've had our case management system now almost 10 years, and we've implemented a lot of changes, new programs to make it more efficient for our staff to use. One of our new changes was we created a disposition wizard to make it easier to close out our cases so our staff doesn't spend as much time doing all this data entry. We've been very busy in 2015 with trials. We tried 81 cases and got a conviction rate of 69% of the cases we tried. So, we don't go to trial a lot when you think our caseload is around 20,000, but when we do, we are fairly successful in those cases. Appeals-wise, we're very active in appeals. We don't like to do appeals, and we sometimes are responding to appeals, but we are not afraid to appeal a case if we feel there's been an incorrect ruling. We also had 2 appeals up to the Supreme Court. We won the first case, and our second one we just argued in early January, so we're awaiting the decision on that. And then our big highlight is this gone on arrival cases that has come out of our VAWA grant. And when I first saw this slide, I thought it was a typo, but I checked with Michelle Jacobs and it's not. This grant has offered us a chance to review these gone on arrivals. What that means is the police are called to a domestic situation. When they get there, the suspect has left the scene. And those cases often can be very difficult to prove. And with this grant and the work with the MPD, we've been able to increase the number of those cases that we were able to charge by 436%. And that's a really big accomplishment. And in 2013, when we did this, we have an 81% conviction rate, and in 2014, a 78% conviction rate on those cases. So those are cases that otherwise we may not have even been able to charge, let alone prosecute. But through this grant, we've been able to achieve very good results and hopefully make a difference for the victims in those cases. The other aspect of this grant is just reviewing, reducing the amount of time between review and charging and when the case first comes to court and gets resolved. And we've had made great strides in reducing those times. In 2016, one of the things that we're going to be working on is continuing to expand on our diversion programs. We want to work through our diversion coordinator in trying to reach out to all eligible people and get them enrolled in these programs. And we're developing a new program with the Minneapolis Police Department for low-level obstructing cases. And the kind of cases we're thinking of are maybe when someone is trying, I just read one this morning where the police responded to assist someone who was in medical distress, and the family member was very upset and kept interfering, and eventually they got cited for obstructing because they were interfering with that. And these are the kind of cases that we're hoping to divert through that program. It's going to be very different than the programs we're doing now, where MPD, especially DC Rondo, has decided he will sit down with the facilitator and the defendant, and they'll sit in a room and they'll have a discussion about how what the defendant's actions did maybe cause some of the reaction by MPD, what MPD could have done better. And we hope that it'll bring a greater understanding to both parties of kind of how the situation maybe could be avoided in the future or diffused sooner. So we're very anxious. We hope to roll that out sometime in February, and we'll see how that goes. But we're excited to try that. In our budget, we got money to create a charging team. What we're going to do is we're going to pull two of our very experienced attorneys, and we're going to try to centralize all our charging functions on these two attorneys. It will hopefully create some efficiencies. It'll create some consistency in our charging. And eventually we hope to work towards pre-charging, and that we really would like to intervene as early as possible and be a part in the charging decision. With misdemeanors, the police often make a lot of the charging decisions by deciding to issue a citation or book the person in jail on a tab charge. And we're hoping to be able to kind of have more input in those charging decisions, especially people being booked into jail. There's a lot of discussions that need to go on, but that's certainly something we hope to accomplish. And part of our charging team function is going to be reviewing the cases that we either decline to charge or we dismiss at our first appearance, and give feedback to the officers on why the case got dismissed, in hopes of kind of improving if there's a mistake in the report writing or a misunderstanding about the law requires. So that feedback is going to be an essential piece for that. And then we're going to be looking at doing some research and see if we can make some recommendations on basically the state of the driving laws. One of the things we are doing is with our IGR department, we're going to try to pursue a legislative change when it comes to the driving diversion program. It's basically been a pilot program since it started back in, I think, 2008. We joined the program in 2010. And at some point, the state needs to realize this is working and hopefully make it a permanent program. One of the big advantages to doing that, and the reason that we're going to push for that change, is right now the participants are limited by the length of the program, which is roughly 18 months. So no matter how much money you may owe, whether it's $400 or I've seen people that owe several $1,000s, they have to pay that off within the length of the program. And for some people, 18 months simply is not enough time to pay off all their fines and fees. It's still too much of a burden. By making this a permanent program, they can create affordable payment plans. And even if it takes a person 3 years to pay it off, the goal is still to get them paid off so they're valid and have insurance. And then we'd like to do some research and look at, is there other changes that could be made to the state law that maybe, that if you get a certain number of offenses, you get suspended for X amount of time. And is that the best way to do the system? And so we want to look at what other states are doing and how they handle some of these driving offenses to see if there's improvements that can be made. We also received a Byrne Criminal Justice Innovation Program Planning Grant for 18 months. We received that back in October. and it's going to focus on crime in Little Earth. And basically the goal of this program is going to be to identify, verify, and prioritize the drivers of crime at Little Earth and try to develop a strategic plan to implement the necessary resources to reduce crime in this community. We're very excited about this grant. It's still kind of in the initial stages of getting the budget set and that, but we're very much looking forward to working on the issues that face the community members that live at Little Earth. And then we've been doing this Hotspots initiative, and in 2016 we plan to expand on that. The Hotspots initiative is a collaborative effort to address domestic violence in hotspots by conducting follow-up visits at addresses where there's been a 911 call for domestic violence, where there has not been a police report made. We're partnering with the police department, the health department, the domestic abuse project, and the Hennepin County Probation Office. The team is comprised of a domestic assault ADAPT therapist and an MPD officer, and basically they go out to the home and they do a follow-up and see if there's any services that can be provided, if there's any needs, any questions. The team was able to make contact with 75% of the people at these addresses, which I think is a pretty good contact rate. So we'll be expanding this program into South Minneapolis, and it will continue on the north side. And it's been a very exciting program, and we've seen a lot of good results come out of it. So we're looking forward to expanding it. And that's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Council members, any questions? All right, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we either saved the best or the most controversial for last. The police department's up.
Good afternoon, Council Chair Yang, Council President Johnson, committee members. On behalf of Chief Harteau, I'm pleased to provide a update regarding MPD activities 2015 and then goals and focuses for 2016. What I will try to hit on is certainly we'll talk about MPD 2.0 and what that cultural change means, not only for within the department, but certainly what our communities can expect from our organization, as well as talk about ways in which we will plan to increase the currency of trust and legitimacy with our communities and how we will embark upon that. I'll also touch on crime from last year, talk a little bit about our OJP, our Office of Justice Programs diagnostic assessment work, as well as the national initiative, some of our recruitment and hiring, and some major event planning. Chief Harteau initiated MPD 2.0 approximately 3 years ago. MPD 2.0 identifies us as values-driven department with our three core values being commitment, integrity, and transparency. Our three core goals of public safety, public trust, employee engagement, and morale help shape us as well. For the past 3 years as a department, we have endured transformational and organization change with 2.0 as a foundation of excellence in achieving, with 2.0 as a foundation in achieving excellence through creating a culture of accountability. And through this process, we have become a national model, leading the way in community engagement, public trust and police legitimacy, and employee professional development. Building trust and legitimacy. The MPD, we certainly understand and value the relationships with our diverse community, the diverse communities that we serve. And we will continue in 2016 to build upon those important relationships using respect and dignity as the two essential guideposts to help us foster those relationships. One of the things that Chief Harteau is very intent on is being very intentional in examining and reviewing, for instance, our low-level offenses and looking for disparities where they may exist. As Deputy City Attorney Mary Ellen Hang noted, we'll be working closely with her department. Driving-related offenses is one of those where we have seen disparities within our city, and certainly she mentioned the obstruction cases that we'll be working closely with their team on. The past year, we started to, for the first time, be able to track our cops out of cars to look at the positive community context our officers are engaging in, whether it's community meetings, showing up at a rec center, reading to kids at schools. Last year, we noted over 88,000 of those types of contacts. And we'll also be working closely with continue to work closely with our Police Conduct Oversight Committee and their two committees, specifically policy and community outreach. I think it's very important to just realize, and this here slide shows these eager young men and women who are being sworn in on their first day, and I know many of you have been to our graduation ceremonies. This is certainly a proud and life-changing event for these young men and women, and we are very proud to have such an excellent sworn-in civilian team members who provide service to our approximately 400,000 residents, visitors, and workers in the city of Minneapolis. And all of the aspirations and goals that these young people join our department to help serve this community, to help serve this city, we want to do everything we can to encourage that, to keep that light shining, and because I believe that we do have the best police officers in the nation for that matter. In 2015, Minneapolis police officers responded to almost 500,000 911 calls for service. Assistant Director McPherson noted that 470,000 of those calls, and while in 2015 we did see an increase in violent crime by 6.67% in the city, burglaries were down citywide 14% for the fourth consecutive year in a row. And for any one of us who's ever unfortunately been the victim of a burglary, that is a very personal crime. And so for our city to have the fourth consecutive year for burglaries, it's really kudos not only to the men and women out there who are doing all they can to prevent these crimes, but certainly our neighbors who are looking out for one another and calling suspicious activity in. Theft from motor vehicles were also down 25%. That equates to 1,000 less theft from motor vehicles in 2015, and larcenies thefts were down 11%. That equates to about 1,440 less larceny crimes. The MPD in 2016 will continue its efforts in public safety with an emphasis in trying to reduce and prevent the violent crime that our city experienced last year, and we'll try to do that with our community outreach, along with focused enforcement and working with our other service partners in adopting best practices to minimize youth exposure to violence. The Deputy City Attorney mentioned the Burn Grant initiative that is going on. We have seen, and the research shows, that if we don't get to these young people who are either witnessing or in the households when domestic violence occurs, if we don't have some sort of service providers to help them through that trauma, we typically will see them again in our police records as start off as witnesses to these types of crimes, suspects in lower level crimes, and then eventually we see them in our incarceration system. So really want to do as much as we can to focus on youth exposure to violence. The Office of Justice Programs Diagnostic Assessment, which was completed last year, we will seek in 2016 to see the work and activation of the recommendations put forth from the 5 subcommittees. The Office of Justice Programs came in and did basically an assessment, kind of a health check of our organization. And from that work, there were 5 key areas that came about that we will continue to work on, and it's a collaboration between not only folks from within the MPD, but we also have community members who comprise of these committees, as well as some of our elected officials here as well. So communication was one of the subcommittees, the early intervention system, coaching, community engagement, and the police conduct oversight. In March of 2015, the city was selected as a participant for the National Initiative for Building Community Trust and Justice. Minneapolis was one of 6 cities across the country. There were over 100 that put in for this groundbreaking initiative. And Minneapolis in 2016, we will start the implementation phase of that. The MPD will be implementing intervention strategies aimed at enhancing procedural justice, reducing implicit bias, and beginning discussions between members of the MPD and our community on reconciliation. We'll be assisted by National Initiative researchers who will test the impact of these strategies to see if there's measurable change to community trust, public safety, and criminal justice practice. Our procedural justice implicit bias department-wide training will begin in February of this year. We have sent 5 of our personnel to Chicago to receive the National Initiative training. They have brought that back. They will tailor it and customize it specifically to Minneapolis and our communities, and that training will start to begin in 2016. And that training is so important, and it's not just for our patrol officers, but everyone from the chief to the newest hired recruit will receive that training. And I should also mention the community will also receive that training as well, and part of the component is having a community member team with us to present that training to community members as well. The body camera implementation, the MPD plans to roll out the first phase of its body cameras sometime this spring. We are still, there are folks who still need to review policy. That includes the city attorney's office, the mayor, the Police Conduct Oversight Committee, and others. But as it was mentioned earlier, there are many recommendations that came forth from the Police Oversight Conduct Committee that we believe is good practice, and actually best practices, portions of that are best practices from around the country. Crisis intervention training. CIT is a law enforcement mental health crisis response, and it teaches the de-escalation model of mental health crisis response. We plan to, our goal is to get everyone through that crisis intervention training, continue our de-escalation techniques, and continue to meet with and talk with community and practitioners on changing best practices. Once again, CIT is one tool, but there are certainly others that we always want to make sure that if they're helpful for our communities and helpful for our police officers in de-escalating situations and keeping our community members safe and getting them the mental health resources they need, we want to continue to explore those. Recruiting and training. The MPD will continue its recruitment focus in 2016 with an effort to increase the size of our department from its current numbers, which will help account for attrition losses as well as the increasingly growing city's population. The MPD will outreach with our community partners, local schools, and faith leaders to assist us in growing a police department that is both diverse and reflective of the community we serve. And I will also just say that I will try to steal as many people from Chief Friedel as I can in that process. So we have major events that will be taking place in Minneapolis, and probably the most magnified one on our radar for all of us will be the Super Bowl. We have a team in place led by Commander Gerlicher that is working closely with our city coordinator to ensure that we are on track with our planning and preparations, including training this year for our city's hosting of the 2018 Super Bowl. We will have a team that will go out and shadow this year's Super Bowl to see all the operations that come into play with that. And certainly from a city perspective, there's a lot of things that will go in there that the city coordinator's office will also be heavily involved in. We will also have our personnel starting training. It's a major event. I've been told it's Actually, I was here when the Super Bowl '92 was here, but it's kind of like the All-Star Game times 10 on steroids. So a lot of preparation that will be going into that, and so we want to just make sure that we are on top of that in terms of that large-scale event planning. So with that, Chair Yang.
DC Rondo, let me start by just asking, what's the staffing count at this point? Number that's budgeted and number that is operational at this point for your staffing?
And Chair Yang, committee members, I'm glad that I have Robin McPherson, our director. I want to say it's 848. Is that
848 at 862, right? Okay.
Chair Yang, that is correct.
Okay. Council members, any questions? Councilmember Gordon.
Well, I have a few questions or maybe some highlights about what I think we might be hearing about later and it was great to see all these initiatives and things you're working on. In terms of the work, the diagnostic assessment work, I'm particularly interested in the early intervention system and when we're going to think it's operational and how we'll know and can have confidence in that. I don't know if you've been around for a few years, and I know we've tried to do an early warning system a few years ago and some other things haven't been so successful. So I'm excited to know when this really is going to be functioning and how we might hear about that.
Chair Yang, Councilmember Gordon. So, yes, our goal is to have that up in place this year. We did send a team. The chairman was, Chair Yang was a part of that went to Seattle to see theirs. It's really a performance-based model that we are going to implement here. I know that there's some software applications that they're looking at, but the goal, in my understanding, is that we really want to get that up and running this year.
So I think that's great. I think maybe what would be, what I would appreciate is if we would get a report back in when it's up and running and maybe a description or a run through of how it actually might work, when and how interventions are made based on what. It might be good to see that and then at the committee level so the public has access to that information too. Second, I was curious about the implicit bias training, and you said community members will be involved. And I was wondering if there'd be any opportunity for council members to observe or participate, or if any thought had been given to that, or maybe other interested city staff.
Chair Yang, Councilmember Gordon. Yes. So there will be opportunities for our council members to participate in that. I know that I have been graciously asked to participate in implicit bias training for one of our elected officials for members of their ward to kind of give an overview of what we will be, that training that will be taking place for our department members. So absolutely, we would encourage our city council members to they have the opportunity to review that training with us. So.
Wonderful. And I look forward to learning more about that. And I also am pretty sure that it's on our work plan as a committee that when the body camera policy is done, we'll get a report on what that is and a chance to hear that.
Chair Yang, Councilmember Gordon, absolutely, that is my understanding. Yes.
You also mentioned crisis intervention training, and then you alluded to best practices, potentially new things, or willingness to expand ideas. And I know that one idea that's been talked about a lot and people have been advocating for is a co-responder model, similar to, I think Houston has a model people are looking at. I know somebody from the Police Conduct Oversight Commission is actually going to go to Houston, I think, to look at it, but Duluth also has this model. I'm looking into it. I want to find out already what the crisis intervention team, the county, has for us, what they offer, so I'm going to try to get more knowledgeable on the subject. But are you looking at this different, and if you don't know what co-responder model is, I can explain my minimal understanding of it. But essentially, it's when a mental health professional actually responds with a police officer to a scene where they think there might be a crisis going on, and they both work together.
Chair Yang, Councilmember Gordon, absolutely. So Chief Harteau was presented some of the work plans of that model, and so we have looked at that. I have looked at that. There are some wonderful things in terms of some practices that law enforcement and along with a mental health social worker provider responding to our communities does. The county has done, our Hennepin County has done a lot of work, at least in terms of gauging what are some practices already in place. There's been ongoing discussions. I have met with other council members on this. In terms of right now, capacity and timing, if the MPD has it right now, I'm not so sure about that. But I do feel very strongly that we have some things in place, particularly with our county providers, where if at some point in time this was ever to be adopted as a practice moving forward, I think we're in a better position just because a lot of the groundwork has been laid out there already. So.
And I think there's a lot of questions and there's some complexities involved. I know that I think in Duluth, it's actually a county employee who is working with the city in partnership. And then looking at the model, I think Houston has more co-responders than others. Los Angeles might have one. I'll just tell you, my assumption was it was something that would probably take a year of research, and then if there were funding implications or those kinds of things. So it's not that I'm glad you're doing the crisis intervention training, and that's highlighted in 2016. This is more of a model that maybe we would need a year to look at and wouldn't get implemented that quickly because I think there are some steps to take. But I'm glad to hear there's some openness and the chief's been looking into it.
Cheers. And Councilmember Gordon, absolutely correct. And some of the discussions that have been going on is just the ones that you've mentioned. Also, what that looks like with having a mental health provider working alongside with the officer, data practices. There's some of those things, but I still believe that we're in a better place if we're to adopt that at some point in time after some time to look at any challenges. I think we're in a better place.
Appreciate that.
Council President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess, Deputy Chief, so does the 800, and for Ms. McPherson, I suppose too, does the 848 include the two classes that were sworn in? Just sworn in?